Don't tell me you're the one touching my car." The words cracked through the luxury service bay like the snap of a whip. Every wrench in the room froze mid-turn as the man in mirrored sunglasses let a slow smirk stretch across his face. "You people ruin engines, not fix them," he hissed, circling the car as if his insult were part of the inspection. Laughter fluttered nervously from a few mechanics eager to please him. The black woman beside the diagnostic monitor didn't rise to meet his hate. "Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and if you believe in giving bullies exactly what they deserve, hit subscribe now. You won't want to miss what happens next." She simply wiped grease from her hands with a stained cloth and murmured, "Your car will run better than new, sir." The steady quiet in her tone made his arrogance sound childish. He leaned closer, voice dripping with venom. "I'll bet my car on that." He pressed the remote with a flourish. The motor coughed, sputtered once, then died completely. For a heartbeat, the bay went still, tension hanging over chrome and concrete. Then his bark of laughter broke the silence. "See, told you. This is why they don't belong here." The chuckles around him grew, filling the space with cowardly approval. She didn't move, eyes fixed on the data streaming across the monitor, her face unreadable. The hum of lights returned, and in the pulse between his laughter and her silence, a single certainty formed. He'd just made a wager he could never win. Long before the smell of motor oil and cold metal filled her days, she had lived inside laboratories that hummed with the pulse of innovation. Rows of monitors, whiteboards crowded with equations, the quiet thrill of creation. That was where she belonged once. She had studied aerospace systems, her mind fluent in the language of propulsion algorithms. The Bay Deej on her old lab coat had read NASA subcontractor, a title she'd earned through discipline, not privilege. Then the call came. Her father's heart attack, hospital bills stacked higher than she could count, and dreams became debts. She traded simulations of flight for engines that already knew how. Now the dealership's concrete floor was her runway. She rose before dawn, tying her scarf back, checking on her teenage brothers before shifting wrenches that weighed heavier with every unpaid notice at home. Yet even here, the same looks followed her, those quietly poisonous glances that had haunted her in university halls and conference rooms. Too black, too female, too calm to fit their picture of brilliance. Across from her stood the customer, a venture capitalist boasting about his firm's revolutionary tech investments. He bragged about funding the future while staring at the grime on her hands as if innovation had color and pedigree. "You fix," he scoffed. "I fund. World needs both." His grin was the same arrogance she'd seen behind every polished boardroom table that once silenced her voice. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, the dealership manager's name flashing. She read the message. "Let the gentleman handle it. Don't make this worse." The words stung more than the insult that started it all. She exhaled a slow breath, thumbed back a single reply. "Copy that." But when she turned to the diagnostic monitor again, her fingers moved with purpose. The algorithm she once wrote for rockets came alive quietly behind her eyes as she kept analyzing, unseen and unshaken. The next morning, the sun poured through the dealership's glass facade, glinting off polished hoods arranged like trophies. Investors in tailored suits clustered around the venture capitalist's prized car, sipping coffee and trading numbers while cameras rolled for a promotional stream. When the ignition button was pressed, the engine purred once, proud and smooth, before coughing violently. A second later, smoke burst from the grill in thick gray clouds, spilling onto the marble floor. Gasps and curses filled the air as alarms shrieked. The customer's voice rose above it all. "She did this. That woman sabotaged my car." His sunglasses caught the glare of the flames inside the exhaust as he spun toward the staff. "I told you she'd ruin it. You people can't handle precision." The words sliced across the crowd. Phones lifted instantly, their red recording icons blinking like accusations. The manager hurried forward, face slick with panic. "Everybody calm down," he pleaded, but the customer jabbed a finger toward her. "Fire her before she burns the whole brand." Investors murmured agreement, protective of their stocks, not truth. She approached quietly, wrench in hand, gaze steady. "Sir," she said evenly, "the torque setting failed because the intake valves weren't recalibrated after your upgrade. It's a design flaw, not sabotage." But reason was drowned beneath his fury. "Excuses!" he barked. "Look at this chaos. This is what happens when amateurs play engineer." The manager swallowed, glancing between them, then squared his shoulders for a performance he thought the cameras required. "We value our clients' trust," he announced loudly. "Effective immediately. You're suspended pending investigation." Gasps rippled through the mechanics. Someone whispered, "She kept that car running all week." Her hand tightened on the wrench. She could have a brigade. She could have reminded them who diagnosed 90% of their failures. Instead, she turned it slowly and offered it handle first, voice calm as a heartbeat. "You're fixing the wrong problem," she said. The sentence landed like a prophecy no one understood yet. The crowd parted as she walked out, soot sticking to her sleeves, investors already whispering about lawsuits and losses. Outside, the drizzle turned to rain, blurring reflections of flashing camera lights. She paused by the edge of the parking lot, raising her face to the downpour that washed the smoke from her skin, but not the sting from her heart. Her eyes narrowed, the calm returning with edges of steel. "These engines taught me discipline," she murmured under the hiss of water in traffic. "Now they'll teach them respect." She turned away footsteps, leaving dark prints that the rain could not erase. The apartment was a single gray room that smelled faintly of oil and burnt coffee. Tools lay scattered across the kitchen table beside a stack of unpaid bills, their edges curling from damp. Beneath the weak glow of a desk lamp, she replayed the engine data on her tablet, numbers scrolling like a heartbeat on the screen. Most people would have seen chaos. She saw patterns. The recordings from yesterday's failure flashed red warnings, but a subtle spike caught her eye. Micro vibrations in the intake valves, the kind a careless algorithm could never predict. Her lips parted slightly. No one at the dealership had noticed. It wasn't sabotage. It was aerodynamics. She leaned back, exhaustion shadowing her eyes. Thunder rolled outside while the city lights blinked distantly, corporate towers glittering like another planet where meetings decided who mattered. In this small room, the only light that counted flickered over her sketches. Candle wax pooled beside a wrench as she began redrawing the schematic, hand firm, movements precise. Each calculation was deliberate, slow, her breath aligning with the rhythm. Inhale, adjust. Exhale, correct. Every number corrected the insult louder than shouting ever could. Her tired mind drifted to simpler days, her mentor's gravel voice echoing across hangar floors. "Engineers don't complain," he used to say. "We prove." The phrase returned now, a mantra pulsing with new life. She wiped ink from her fingertips and smiled faintly, the expression small but unbreakable. Anger gave way to discipline, discipline to resolve. By dawn, the schematics were complete, their lines sharper than the night before, ready for someone willing to see truth instead of prejudice. She opened her laptop, corridors of dim light reflecting in her eyes, and composed a short email addressed to an anonymous inbox she once used when consulting on prototypes. Her fingers struck each key with quiet certainty, forming the message that would upend everything. Found your problem. It isn't human error, it's aerodynamics. By the end of the week, headlines screamed about the defect. Luxury innovation melts down. Investors demand explanation. Streams of online footage replayed the smoky disaster, looping humiliation into every corner of the company's image. The same customer led the mob, storming headquarters with lawyers in polished suits trailing behind him. "Your engineering is garbage," he shouted into microphones, each word another blow. Executives rushed between meetings, eyes wide with sleepless panic. Inside the glass tower built on pride, confidence cracked under the weight of public shame. Conference rooms glowed blue with emergency consultations. Outside experts arrived, muttering jargon that promised everything and solved nothing. The tension thickened until the main doors swung open and silence rippled across marble floors. She walked in, coveralls clean, designs rolled under one arm, calm as gravity. The reception guard stepped forward uncertainly. "You're not authorized," one began. She raised her chin. "You fired me," she said evenly, "but you still need me." The boardroom absorbed her entrance like static before a storm. The venture capitalist sat at the far end, sunglasses hanging now useless from his collar, pale beneath the fluorescent lights. The tech lead, the same man who once dismissed her data as theoretical nonsense, laid his hands flat on the table. "We've already hired consultants," he said with tight disdain. "We don't need help from someone who couldn't keep a job." A murmur of agreement followed, a ritual of self-protection. She unrolled the blueprint onto the table, paper whispering defiantly against glass. "That's why you still don't understand the vibration fault," she replied. Fingers traced. Add the airflow vectors she'd redrawn overnight. Equations intersected with a precision beyond the temporary fixes they'd attempted. It's not a mechanical error. It's aerodynamic drag amplified by your redesign. If you let me correct it live, I can prove it. Laughter slipped from the tech lead's lips, brittle and nervous. "Live? You want an audience for your second disaster?" The CEO's gaze wandered between the faltering investors on video call and the confidence radiating from the woman in grease-stained cuffs. No one else in the room could match her stillness. "One condition," she said quietly. "I get full control of the test. No interference, no edits, just results." For a long moment, only the air conditioning hummed. Pride battled necessity in the CEO's eyes until pragmatism finally broke through. He leaned forward, voice dry. "This better not waste our time." Her reply was immediate, unwavering. "It won't." Around her, the executives shifted. The arrogant customer exhaled through clenched teeth, and somewhere beneath the polished floorboards, old prejudice began to tremble. She spread the blueprints across the polished boardroom table, weighted the corners with coffee mugs, and picked up a marker. Equations came alive beneath her hand, lines and arcs forming a language no one in the room fully understood. "Here," she began, her tone calm but commanding. "Your redesign introduced asymmetrical airflow along the rear intake. These microturbulences destabilize pressure at high torque." Symbols filled the whiteboard behind her as she moved seamlessly from automotive mechanics to aerospace physics. A few engineers exchanged smirks, eager to watch her stumble. Those calculations are theoretical, one muttered, folding his arms. She didn't look back. So was flight once, she replied. Her marker swept downward, connecting two vectors and pulling up a cross-reference file on the projector. Archival aerospace data, precision curves from her years spent modeling rocket propulsion. Figures rolled in side-by-side comparison, and one by one the smirks faded. The drag coefficients matched exactly. The silence that followed was abrupt, heavy. The board members leaned forward unconsciously, their skepticism bending under arithmetic truth. At the far end of the table, the venture capitalist forced a laugh to keep control. "Math won't start engines," he said, his tone laced with the same condescension that had echoed in the service bay days before. Her gaze met his for the first time. "It did, for rockets," she said softly. The sentence landed like a thunderclap, a quiet truth carrying more gravity than his wealth ever could. A nervous cough broke the stillness as phones clicked to record, the shift in power happening in real time. The CEO studied the diagrams again, his disbelief turning into wary consideration. Even the once mocking engineers couldn't hide the spark of curiosity in their eyes. Hope stirred, faint but undeniable, within both the room and the audience's hearts. She capped the marker and stepped back. "Set a live test," she said simply. The CEO hesitated, trapped between pride and pragmatism. Before he could answer, the customer straightened his tie, sneer returning like armor. "Fine," he said. "Let's make it public. I'll be there to witness your failure firsthand." She met him with a small, measured smile. "Good," she said. "You should see how success really sounds." The hangar smelled of metal and tension. Rows of employees lined the mezzanine railings while cameras flared in the hands of journalists invited to witness redemption or ruin. Below, a solitary figure in coveralls walked around the prototype engine, sleeves rolled past her elbows, face streaked with machine light. Her small team of junior mechanics waited for orders, eyes darting nervously toward the board of executives watching from the glass corridor above. She ran a hand along the turbine's body as though greeting an old ally. "Purge the fuel lines," she said quietly. "We start clean." Her voice carried through speakers, calm but absolute, and even the skeptics obeyed. Screens flickered to life, diagnostic graphs pulsing red. The air vibrated with murmurs of doubt until she knelt by the console, adjusting pressure manually, refusing automation that had failed them once before. The chalk smudge on her hand brushed over a calculation she scribbled hours ago, an adjustment born from aeronautical design, something only she could interpret. "What exactly is she doing?" one investor whispered. The tech lead shrugged, uneasy. "Guess we'll find out if we survive her experiment." His attempt at humor fell flat. The room's pulse beat to her movements now. "Ready for ignition," she said. A mechanic nodded, voice trembling as he confirmed sequence. Outside the observation glass, the CEO leaned forward unconsciously. The arrogant customer stood behind him, mouth tight, muttering, "She's guessing." Then came the sound, a rising hum building into a scream. The engine spun once, twice, choking on its own breath. She typed new airflow ratios, fingers dancing faster across the keyboard than thought itself. "Stabilize Vector 15, she commanded. The turbine whir spiraled upward until a deep, steady roar filled the bay. Smoke cleared in long curls. Heat shimmered above the gleaming metal, but the temperature gauge trembled shy of the danger zone. The red line blinked, then slid slowly into green. For a heartbeat, no one moved, Then a single monitor beeped. Steady. The color poured across every screen in glowing confirmation. Green. The silence that followed was colossal, a vacuum sucking arrogance out of the air. The CEO let out a low, unbelieving laugh that cracked halfway through. "She just saved the company," he murmured. The words echoed out of him and spread like gospel. Phones shot up, journalists whispering disbelief, mechanics dropping wrenches because their hands shook too hard. She stood, wiping grease from her palms. The customer stared, frozen. "Impossible," he said weakly. The engine behind her thundered with life, proof that mocked his disbelief. She turned to face him fully, expression serene. Her voice carried clearly through the PA. "You said people like me couldn't build engines," she said. "Now you're standing in one that runs because I did." The sentence hit with such quiet force that even the turbines seemed to pause between revolutions. Applause erupted, first hesitant, then swelling into a roar that rivaled the machine itself. Technicians cheered, a few wiping tears. Investors clapped with guilty relief. The CEO nodded once, humbled but grateful. The customer took a step back, shrinking beneath the flood of admiration he could neither command nor stop. She didn't smile widely or raise her arms. Pride showed only in her eyes, calm and bright. Flashbulbs strobed as she walked toward the exit. Outside, cool air met her face, carrying faint cheers from within. She drew a long, steady breath. The injustice had burned itself out behind her, leaving nothing but the sound of engines humming in harmony. A song she had written in silence. The next morning, sunlight poured through the dealership's atrium, gleaming off polished chrome now more symbol than surface. Rows of employees filled the lobby, voices hushed but faces bright with anticipation. At the center stood the CEO with cameras flanking him, his earlier arrogance replaced by careful humility. "Yesterday," he began, pausing as murmurs rippled, "our company was drowning in failure. Today it's reborn because of her." He turned toward the woman standing quietly beside the display model. "From this day forward, we're proud to appoint her as Chief Innovation Engineer." Applause swept through the room like a rising tide. She lifted her chin slightly, hands clasped in front of her, grace softening the power of the moment. "Thank you, sir," she said. "But I only want fair recognition for anyone who keeps these engines running. There's more talent here than title." Her words drew nods across the floor, breaking invisible walls that years of hierarchy had built. Near the edge of the crowd, the venture capitalist hesitated before stepping forward, sunglasses gone, arrogance stripped raw. "You proved me wrong," he said quietly, extending a reluctant hand. She regarded it for a beat, then nodded once and clasped it briefly. Professional, polite, without gloating. It was victory without venom. Around them, the same workers who had watched her unveiling in silence now crowded close, their pride reflected in every grin and tear-lined eye. One mechanic whispered to another, "She did it for all of us." The energy shifted. Merit, not money, commanded attention again. Cameras flashed as banners unfurled overhead. New Horizons powered by her genius. The press conference wound down, and calm replaced applause. She stepped away from the spotlight, letting others soak in the renewed sense of purpose spreading through the building. Outside, engines hummed softly on the test track, a perfect living signature to everything she had endured. She exhaled slowly, smile faint but steady, content not with the certificate in her hand, but with the sound of progress built on respect. Justice hadn't shouted this time. It had simply run better than new. In the end, it wasn't money, connections, or swagger that saved the company. It was quiet discipline inside a woman everyone dismissed. Prejudice had nearly destroyed innovation, blinding a room full of experts to the brilliance standing among them in oil-stained coveralls. She didn't shout to be heard. She simply did. The work and the truth roared louder than their arrogance ever could. The lesson lingered long after the cameras stopped flashing. Leadership isn't the loudest voice carried through a microphone. It's the calm command that moves a trembling hand back to focus. It's the decision to fix what's broken instead of searching for someone to blame. When arrogance crumbled, humility built something stronger, proof that progress has no uniform, only courage. In every workplace, classroom, and home, there are unseen minds waiting for one fair chance. This story belongs to them, a reminder that respect isn't inherited through titles or wealth. It's earned through consistency, integrity, and unwavering excellence. True strength doesn't posture, it perseveres. Share this story if you believe respect must be earned, not inherited. Subscribe for more justice drama stories that remind us humility builds the future.